Kids, teens, and tech. What's the big deal? The big deal is there are some indications that we're damaging our kids and their brains and their mood, and I'm going to talk about all that stuff. What started off as a fantastic, wonderfully good idea to have all this technology, because frankly, we love it and it helps us in many ways. Too much of a good thing can be damaging. So, as I have to my disclaimer on every single time, even though I'm a clinical psychologist, this isn't assessment, this isn't treatment, so I'm not treating any of your children and anything like that, all right? Acknowledgement to Kelly, who's been a great partner and actually brainstormed the idea in the first place, to Hudson Physicians and their wonderful staff for sharing their space, doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and to my daughter Haley, who spent a lot of hours this summer researching for me. And so she dug into the research in ways that I probably wouldn't have known how to do. So a couple of times she goes, Mom, did you know this? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And she'd put it all in a little spreadsheet for me, and thank you, Haley. I told her I was giving her acknowledgement, and she texted me back, and of course it's texting. And she goes, Mom, thank you so much. I feel now like an adult. She's 20. All right, remember the Home Alone? Ah, all right, here's my kind of other disclaimer. Caution, you will probably be freaked out a little bit in this topic, but don't worry, 'tis better to know than not to know. If we know anything, we can get a grip on it and we can do something about it. You're gonna probably have a little bit of parent anxiety about this topic before you arrived, and I'm probably gonna spike that up a little bit. This I do with almost every therapy kid that comes into my office at some point. I call it Dr. C's famous feelings line. Is it famous? No. But you know, like when you're driving down the road and you see that billboard that says famous hamburgers or famous donuts. Okay, they're not famous, but a lot of people go there. That's the deal here. I use this all the time. A lot of people use this. So beware and not go into the danger zone. 7, 8, 9, and 10 of your own anxiety, all right? If I see somebody sprinting out of here, I'm gonna know I freaked you out and I apologize. Okay, try and bring it down. Objectives, we're going to discuss the use of electronics in teens in more recent years, and we're going to discuss the effects in a bunch of different areas on your kids. We're going to talk about potential changes in brain structure, brain neurochemistry. We're going to talk about mood. We're going to talk about, kind of like this, regulatory ability, the ability to control our own impulses, memory, attention, sleep, and social relationships. So what kind of data is out there? It's all over the place, guys. This hasn't really become an issue until fairly recently, so the data is very, what we call young. There's a lot of things that still have to be explored. I will say, even this afternoon, as I was kind of reviewing this topic to get it fresh in the old brain, there was an article on CNN. I had the app on my phone, and there was another study that was just coming out, a big old long study, breaking it up into different ages, and I'm like, dang it, I got that presentation tonight. I should have included some of this. So that's kind of how it is. It's constantly being churned out, but it's because it's so young, we still don't have the full breadth of really what all is happening. What's scary is that there's so much that we just don't know yet. All right, so what is happening, guys? Well, the current generation is kind of informally called iGen. These are kids born between 1995 and 2012. They grew up with social media before they started high school. They do not remember a time before the internet. By the way, do you guys know, let me see, where did I put this? I had some data I just picked up today. Oh, well, I think I'm going to guess because I think I remember what it was. Do any of you know when the internet was launched? Like the WWW? 1995. Okay, there was an internet-ish thing that started around 1991, 92, but the official WWW, called the World Wide Web, 1995. I mean, that's just like, that's not that long ago, guys. It really isn't. I was surprised by that. So these kids, they grew up with smartphones, and then a major shift was detected in 2012 when the percent of Americans who owned a smartphone passed 50%. That's a lot. Now I'm guessing, I don't even know, I should have found the data on this. How many people have adults have a smartphone now? I'm going to guess it's probably 97, 98%, upper 90s. I personally don't know anybody who doesn't. So it's the combined use of smartphone use plus the social media thing. That's an important thing for you guys to remember throughout this. I'm going to be kind of all over the place in terms of the type of technology. I'm not going to be talking very much about just like pure TV. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the cell phone stuff. Okay, that's what I see the most, with a little bit on video games. But most of it's going to be on cell phones. But if you think that electronics also is watching a movie, okay, watching TV with your family versus having a TV in your bedroom and watching it all the time. There's video games. There's doing your homework on a computer. Okay, that's different. There's YouTube, though, on your computer. So there's all these different dimensions of really what electronics means. I chose to kind of narrow it down a little bit by really the thing that I see the most, which is my little kids that I see that are in my waiting room, and I go talk to the mom, and the little kid is either has their own cell phone or mom or dad gives them their cell phone, and they're sitting there, and I have toys in my office, all right? And they're gripping it like it's like for their life. You know, say, can't let go of smartphone, can't let go of smartphone. I'm like, oh, kid, play with my toys. I got good toys. So that's what makes it more profound. There are some positives for this generation, guys. They're physically safer, all right? It's because they're not getting out as much, okay? They're less likely to get in a car accident because they're staying in their room on their phone, and less of a taste for alcohol. All right, they're not going out and binge drinking as much, these teenagers, because they're home on their phones. So I'm like, yay, all right, we'll take it, right? However, there are some negatives of iGen, and these are the scary things, guys, all right? The rates of depression and suicide have skyrocketed in the past just 8 years. People are calling on the brink of the worst mental health crisis in decades. I mean, that's just scary stuff. Addiction to electronics has increased. Especially those video games and smartphones. There's lack of development of adequate social skills. Okay, some of you, we were talking earlier, and it's like our kids don't talk to each other. All right, they're next to each other, and they're on their phones. Encouraged by kids having their social life on the phones, they don't see a need to leave home and spend time with their friends. Why not? You know, I just stay here. The other thing that's of concern is there's a big developmental delay in what we call lacking the delay of gratification. Okay, what is delay of gratification? It means we have to wait for something. We might have to wait a week. We might have to wait a month. We might have to wait a year. All right, I had to wait 9 years till I got through graduate school. That's a long time, guys. So this instant feedback through these phones, kids aren't learning that whole mechanism of how do you delay gratification. How important is that for grown-ups? Does anybody, how important? Give me some feedback. Very, right? If we can't delay gratification, we got a lot of problems going on. And then this one, the lack of rebellion and independence from parents. Now, on the surface, parents might say, well, great, I don't have to deal with the kind of awful teenagers, right? Who are challenging me at every bit. And, you know, they're not going to be yelling at me. They're not going to be like all ticked off at me. As we were probably growing up, you know, that's part of growing up is rebelling against our parents. That's a big sign and preparation for independence, which equals adulthood. Teens these days aren't doing it in the same way as they used to because they have their phones. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Because that also is working on, and it impacts their delayed vocational development, okay? How many of you, when you were a teenager, had a job? Raise your hand. I think almost everybody. Oh, I should have included myself, okay? Kids these days, because they have immediate gratification on their phones and everything is easily accessible to them, they're not yearning to grow up. They're not yearning to be independent. So back in the old days, why would we get a job? It would give us money. Money equaled independence, right? So if you're independent, that's your way of, you sass off at your parents, but then you work and you get away from them and you start to figure out what an adult is, all right? So now if you don't have that rebellion and that desire to work and get out of the house, you don't have your mechanism to do that. You got no money. Okay, you got to earn the money to fund your rebellion, okay, and independence. So it's a tricky thing that we're kind of keeping kids homebound more. All right. So in the 70s, 77% of high school seniors worked for pay. In the 2010s, it was only 55%. And I will tell you, I work with kids and teens and have for many, many years. 28. That's a long time. And when I get my kids that are like getting 15, 16. If they're getting close to 16, I'm like, when are you going to get a job? Have you talked to your parents about getting a job? And the look they give me is like, are you for real? And I'm like, let's talk about this. You know, what is getting a job? It gets you out of the house. It gets you some money. You get to go and do things, whatever. And they look at me like, no, I don't think so. I got it pretty cushy right here. All right, but that's stunting their development socially and vocationally. All right. And I already mentioned that. So not working equals no money to fund independence, which is a requirement for successful adulthood. So how you feeling, guys? Are you getting a little bit anxious-y? A little bit? All right. So here, I want you guys to think just a little bit. When you hear these statements on the differences in this generation, how does that make you feel? Any reflections? Guilty? Yeah. And yet, you know, worried? Yeah. I get kind of overwhelmed thinking about it. And my kids are almost 23 and 20. And so they kind of like eked out. They're a little bit ahead of the curve, okay, in terms of when this stuff was more impactful. Still wasn't challenging, but sometimes it's just the luck of the draw, how old your kids are and when they were born and what they were born into, all right? Did you guys get a job in high school? And did it help you or harm you? Mine helped me, okay? I grew up on a farm. All right, was it working in a restaurant or something more unique? By the way, I put that one on the right in there because my first job was about age 10, and my first job for money, I guess I should say. I sold watermelons on our family farm. Okay, 50 cents, or if they were really big, $1. Cantaloupes, 3 for $1, pumpkins, 50 cents. I got money. And then as a teenager, I worked in like a Walmart type store in Missouri that doesn't exist anymore. Anybody want to share what their first job was? Anybody? Kelly, what was your first job?
Well, I babysat forever.
Yes.
I was 11.
You got money.
Right. And then I worked in a pharmacy, believe it or not.
The future was calling her. It's what we
I had 3 sisters. We all had to work. And we would pay, if there was something that we really wanted, we would save our money to buy a bike,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah. Yeah. And those equal freedom. They do. They've equal freedom and independence. How many of you have teenagers? I'm curious. We've got a few who have teenagers. Okay. Are your teenagers approaching like 15, 16 at all? Have you thought about what you want to do for a job for them? I mean, do you think they'll get one?
My son got a summer job.
Yeah! Applause.
Yeah.
Was he proud?
Yeah, he really was.
Would he have gotten that proud if he hadn't gotten a job?
Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
See, that's an important thing to look at too, is yes, it's kind of a pain for them to get their butts up in the morning and get to a job, but they get pride. They get pride, and we need that again as adults. So that's very cool. Tell him he gets the gold star. Yes.
My 12-year-old just got her first check for babysitting, and she was really, really proud.
Oh, that's how she builds it. You know, if she hadn't done that, how would she feel?
I think it was confidence boosting all over.
Absolutely. And the more those things happen, guys, even if your kid is using their phone a lot, it counterbalances it to some degree. You know, look upon life as a counterbalance. If you have some negatives thrown in there, too much cell phone use, too much video gaming, whatever, do your best. That's what we're going to keep talking about. But you also have to add other things into this side of the balance scale. Okay, so this one's ultimately heavier. All right, and things like getting a job, it boosts that self-confidence. It boosts that pride. All right, it gives them actual skills. They can talk to people about that. Hey, you know what? I just got a job at, this and that. All right, let's see what this research is going to tell us. All righty. Okay, so basically I'm going to sort through all these things that I mentioned before, mood, regulation, et cetera. I do want to know all of these kind of effects are dependent to some degree, it can be a lot or a little bit, on your individual kid's own temperament. Okay, temperament is each kid's style. Okay, it's their style of operating. I think I mentioned this in the anxiety presentation. Here's how I sometimes explain it to parents. Temperament it's our disposition. We're born with it, okay, hardwiring. Some kids are what I call my bouncy ball kids, okay? They're highly resilient. They get cell phones. They get all this other stuff, and they just deal, nothing too big. They bounce, okay? No matter what life gives them, they bounce. They can navigate things much more easily. The other kids are my sponge kids. These are the kids who they just suck up any kind of stress, any kind of little change in their environment, in their little world, you see a big effect. And thankfully, most kids are kind of somewhere in the middle on their disposition. But some kids, especially kids like ADHD or autism or have a really highly sensitive temperament, those kind of kids are going to be more on this extreme over here and are going to be more likely to either get addicted to electronics or to have, when we talk about the social media stuff and its impact, to suck all that in. So to get more anxiety-ish or more depression, okay? So you have to look at who your kid is. And if you have more than one kid, good luck. It's going to be probably 180 of each other. So you got to figure out kid A. Okay, here's how they work. Kid B, here's how they work. And bless your hearts, if you even go for C and D, my hat's off to you, because I don't think I could have done it, guys. But they're all going to be different to varying degrees. So when I say these things, note that your kid may have their response somewhat less or more impactful just because of how they're wired, okay? All righty. Effects on brain. Give me some of that, all right? Dopamine, dopamine. Our brain loves dopamine. All right, I really wanted one of those brownies back there, and if I would have eaten that brownie, that first bite in my mouth would have been a dopamine high. It would have been like, oh, this tastes, because I really want one. And we'll see if there still is one left, maybe. All right, my brain would be getting a real joy out of it, like, ah, all right? So a lot of things that give us pleasure cause dopamine releases. Well, guess what, guys? Anytime we do Snapchat and Facebook and stuff like that, we post something on Facebook, somebody likes it, ding, ding, okay? Instagram, Snapchat, anytime somebody likes our thing or comments on it, ding, 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 ding. So I did it like that. There's the old slot machine, all right? I tell people it's like if you go into a casino and you got 10 quarters in your pocket, you put one quarter in. I think this is back in the old days when they had the handle to pull down. I don't think they do that anymore. I don't really go to casinos, but I think I'm going back to the old days, guys. Pull down the handle and nothing, okay? Your brain learned nothing. Except I put in a quarter and I lost it. You keep doing that for quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. Quarter 10, you put in that quarter, you pull down the slot machine handle and ding, 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 ding. Oh, that dopamine is rushing, guys. Okay, your brain loves it, loves it, loves it. So what do most people do after they get the jackpot, guys? Spend it again, because our brain wants that again. All right, but slot machines are programmed on a random reinforcement schedule, which means you never know when you're going to get a payout, guys. So it's only if the slot machine is broken and you walk away. All right, otherwise, as long as you keep standing there, your brain is going to continue to be randomly activated with dopamine, and because it loves dopamine so much, it's going to keep going. All right, that's how these phones are. It's giving us these dopamine highs. And if we say, okay, I'm not going to do my phone for 4 hours, step away. Okay, then you come back and you see all the nice little hits and stuff that you got, you know. Ooh, somebody liked this. Ooh, wow, this is going on. For me today, when I found that CNN article, my brain got a little dopamine high. It liked it, like that was cool. All right, so the only way of really getting rid of this is you step away from the phone and you throw it in the river. Probably not likely to happen, guys. All right, so questions thus far? Nope, all right. This is also, it goes with that social media stuff because our human brains have evolved to be social creatures, guys. We need social interaction. We crave it to varying abilities depending on our own temperament. Okay, but even if we are, not really like outwardly, extroverted or anything, we're still a social being wanting social contact. The social structures in which we thrive, I found this data interesting. Back in the old days, the brain structure was structured such that we wanted about 150 individuals in our network. Okay, so think back, let's say 30 to 50 years ago, before the internet. We would think about 150 people who know us or in our world, family, friends, childhood people that we knew, people from our school that we knew, people from our church or our Hebrew school that we knew, about 150. All right, and that's maybe stretching it for some of us. Those were our social connections that we had available to us. Now, thanks to our smartphones, we have about 2 billion potential connections that we just carry around. 2 billion. So we can access anything. I could access somebody on the other side of the world and say that's a social connection. Or don't get me started whenever I have kids in my office and they're like, by the way, I've trained myself not to roll my eyes, okay? But sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, because I have a kiddo and I feel badly for them, but they're like, yeah, Dr. C, and I have like all these friends and it's through my gaming system. Well, do you know who they are or where they live? Oh, they live somewhere over in some other part of the world. But that's their friends. Okay, but that's not part of the 2 billion potential things, but that's not a friend. Okay, that's not a qualitative friend. So we're kind of mixing the messages to our kiddos here, and it's because of this enhancement in availability for our social network. Does that make sense, guys? We need 150. We've got access to 2 billion. By the way, Haley dug up that research. I'm like, Haley, that's good. So dopamine gets released when we have those successful social interactions, and then we get rewarded for that. We want to repeat that behavior again and again. Think of it like ding, ding, ding going off in your brain. By the way, many apps use that variable reinforcement schedule. They do. I didn't write down the names of them because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But there also is some research that I found that some app developers are actually studying those things to intentionally try and get kids to hit more, okay, with their app. I'm sorry, guys. I just find that unconscionable, But there are people that are doing that a lot. All right, so research is still in the early stages for the anatomical changes or the neurochemical changes in the brain. We did keep following that, but a fairly early study conducted by the National Institute of Health shows that 7+ hours of technology per day has shown premature thinning of the cortex of the brain. Okay, guys, that just freaks me out. Okay, we're talking permanent stuff there. If we talk thinning of the brain's cortex, we can't just build cortex, guys. Okay, we can't. There is some other research that I'm aware of being studied about looking at brain synapses that they're not connecting or being taught to connect like they need to for optimal development. That also scares me. It's like, oh, you can't change that. All right, so a lot of parents will say, well, my kid will never do 7+ hours of technology. Oh, I got him in my office, man. All right, you add it all up, and it's 7 hours. So we just need to keep studying these kids over time. I just find it scary. We all have kids. We all love our kids. We all want to save our kids' brains. And again, technology is not all bad. It's not bad that your kids have a cell phone. It's just too much. It's that too much kind of unlimited go for it kid, and at too young of an age. Okay, by the way, if I ever see you guys at Target and you have like a little baby in the cart and you've given it your cell phone, don't be surprised if I stop you. I really won't, but I've been tempted to, because especially after studying this with the more specific research, I'm like, oh, honey, no, don't give your baby the phone while you're doing your grocery shopping. Baby's like 1. So scary, yeah. Effects on kids' mood. Now this kind of ties into the anxiety presentation that I did in April or May. I can't remember when it was. So in only 8 years, the thoughts of suicide increased 25%, guys. Teens diagnosed with clinical depression increased 37%. Suicide rate of teens has now surpassed the rate of homicide. I was like, oh gosh. Boys' depressive symptoms increased by 21% in only those 3 years, and girls' depressive symptoms increased by 50%. And I'll tell you, a lot of them are in my office, guys. I feel so badly because they're truly anxious. They're truly depressed. This isn't a faking thing, but this is that society is just like, we're too much pressuring our kids. Their brains are just like, by the way, that's going to be recorded. That's going to be weird. And it's too much for them. So there are statistical significant associations between the amount of screen use and the rate and the level of depression among kids and teens. And then just back in 2017, adolescents who spend more time on the social media and electronics are at higher risk for depression and suicide-related outcomes, higher for girls than boys. All right? Girls tend to be more affected by the social media aspect. They're just on it more. I mean, think back to the old days. I'm not a guy, but guys in the locker room, they have a fight with each other, and 10 minutes later they're cool. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Girls tend to like hang on to things more and be like, oh, you know what? 2 weeks from now, it's still like, why were you mad at me? Blah blah blah. Similar thing goes into social media. Okay, girls are just more drawn into it. Let's see, next slide. This is one of my sad pictures. Okay, I don't like to look at that picture because it's dark. And it shows a depressed-looking kid. And it's like, I don't want any kid to be like that. Teens who spend more time than average on the screen time are much more likely to be unhappy. And those who spend more time than average on non-screen activities are more likely to be happy. What are some non-screen activities, guys? Small audience. What's that? Sports. Games, sports. Music, absolutely. Reading. Cooking, crafts, being excellent. By the way, if any of you have like girls between the ages of like 7 and 13, kind of in the sleepover age, okay, back when my kids were in that age, sleepover meant you actually went to somebody's house and you like played and hung out, and then you eventually went to sleep way too late. Now a sleepover is you go to somebody's house and you're on your phone next to people. It's kind of what it is. Sad but true. And I will be talking a little bit in this presentation and much more next time about how to do those things with your kids instead of the screens. We need some substitutions here. The other one, kids and teens experience an increase in loneliness. And nobody really talks about that word. We talk about depression, we talk about anxiety. We don't really look at the one little aspect there, loneliness, because that's at a little deeper level. And kids don't like to talk about it. I try and get them talking about that it's okay to feel lonely, I get it. Then what can we do to help you to feel less lonely? So this social media stuff where they have a gazillion friends, they're not friends. And there's a part of their brain that knows it, and then the part of their brain that gets, goes along with the crowd and it's like, oh, but I have all these friends. So there's this push-pull even in their brains then. But the underlying dynamic is they're lonely. So we need to be able to address that. The next one's kind of repetitious. I should comment, we don't know for sure whether phone use equals depression or depression equals phone use. I think it's phone use equals depression, guys. I've been practicing forever, and I just see this more and more as the increase in the younger age. Given your kids' phones, I see much more of this anxious and depressed kids than I did 25 years ago.
And when you say phone, you're really saying it's the internet. That's what you're doing.
Correct, and don't get me going on YouTube because that's the same thing. It's highly interactive, yeah. Playing sports, going to religious services, being in a club, physical exercise, doing things with family, or even homework, okay, cuts their risk. All righty. FOMO. I didn't actually know what this was really for a long time. People talk about FOMO and I had to look it up. There is, by the way, if you Google like some of these things, like TIA means thanks in advance. I never knew that. Okay, you can Google those things. You have to use the internet to do it, but that's an educational purpose, I guess. FOMO, fear of missing out. Oh, this is huge. This is huge, 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 especially on girls, especially between the ages of, I'd say, 8 and 14, FOMO. More pronounced for girls. Social media exacerbates the feeling of being left out and feeling lonely. Feeling lonely? Check under your local Snapchat. Let's see what's happening. That really doesn't cure loneliness. Okay, it just makes you feel more lonely. There's such common group chats, group texts. Guys, again, you just don't know how often I see this, where these poor little kids, and there's like an 8-girl, group chat or whatever, and so-and-so and so-and-so are getting together. Nothing against them, they're just doing what kids do, but in the group chat, it's announced that those two are gonna go do something, and then the others, including my kid sitting right there in my office crying, feels left out, like, why wasn't I invited? Well, because it's kind of a 2-person thing. It's not for the whole group, but the whole group is aware of it, just because of the way that the communication is organized. So lots of distress over that. It's a key factor in anxiety and depression. Look at that one. I had to put that one on there. Poor little penguin. He's left out. This is an example. What did I miss? They're talking about me. So Chelsea told Emma this, and Emma told Jamie this, and blah, 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 and it keeps going on and on. A little bit exaggerated, that's kind of how it is. All right? Random names, by the way. All right, any questions about the mood part? That's a big, big area. I'm just kind of giving the highlights. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Effects on regulation. Technology, especially phones and video stuff, is having significant effects on kids' development of regulatory skills. When they're told to put their phone away or stop playing a video game, parents often see their kid lash out. Who can relate to that? Oh, yes, indeed. And it's like, Johnny, Susie, it's time to go now. No. First, they're probably going to try and ignore you, okay? Then it's, no, just one more minute, Mom. No, just one more minute. Johnny, it's time to go. Mom, I told you no. Okay, and on and on. And for the younger kids, they're going to have a ginormous meltdown. Older kids, it's probably just going to be verbal conflict. Not a pleasant thing. So the mood becomes irritable, defiant, disrespectful. Then their behaviors become dysregulated. Then they start to lose it, all right? And as kids rely more on electronics for enjoyment, they're not developing the key internal regulators that they need for success. Now, like, you guys are all nicely regulated right now. Nobody's having a tantrum. Nobody's having an obvious, emotional fit. Everybody's calm. Nobody's looking at that technology. You all have learned to be regulated. How did you learn to be regulated? You were taught when you were a child, and you've been practicing it a gazillion times until your current age. You're regulated. Your brain learns how to turn on and turn off, and you've learned a rule. When I'm in a presentation, I sit at a table, and I listen, and I answer questions and stuff, right? So your brain has learned that. Our kids aren't learning that regulatory piece. That's a brain learning thing. Think of it like your car. If it's not regulated, it's not going to work well, right? If I ignore the check engine light, guess what's going to happen? Okay, my car's already telling me it's not regulated, it's going to die. Okay, hopefully not by the side of the road. Actually, I have had that happen, though. That's not good. If adults don't regulating themselves, like at their job, well, they get fired, right? If you go off on your boss, sorry, bye-bye. They're not going to take it. It's a requirement of adulthood that we regulate. We're just not teaching our kids how to do that. Gaming and tech addiction leads to losing your ability to focus and remember. The attention is captured instead of voluntarily regulated, okay? The way to describe this, it's like these apps. It's capturing our attention to stay on that app. Think of like Facebook, all right? It's capturing us and saying, once we log in and we sign in, then it's got us. Okay, now we're gonna pay attention to Facebook, all right? if we never log on to Facebook, we're not going to have that as an issue at all. So the app and its developer are actually regulating what we're doing instead of us deciding, I'm not going to start Facebook. It's so addictive, it's hard to not succumb to that pressure to just keep doing it again and again. Okay? So kids' brains are being pushed and pulled by those external stimuli instead of deciding where it needs to go. Example, I was this past weekend deciding to feel craftsy. Okay, it's part of the old farm thing. And I looked up a recipe for, what was it? It's like a not body butter, it's like one of those lotion bars. That's what it was, all right? So where do I go for directions on how to make those? YouTube, right? So body bars, all right? Go to YouTube. Found a wonderful recipe, by the way. I can tell you it if you need it. But on the side, next to the YouTube thing, what did I see? I saw other craftsy things. That is pulling me to that. So instead of my brain just deciding I'm going to stick on one thing and one thing only, there's a pull, right? Ooh, that one's kind of right up my alley. Oh, what about that one? All right, so that YouTube has been programmed to, like, if I search something, it's finding similar things to grab me instead of me deciding independently, oh, I want to look up that thing. All right? So does that make sense? All right. I thought the YouTube idea was kind of the better one to explain it. My daughter found this one too, and she really liked it. Jet skiing versus scuba diving. So if you think of the internet and all the stuff that's on it and our 2 billion possibilities for social connections, it's like internet's like a jet ski. Okay? It's like choo, 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 choo. So it skims the surface of the water at high speed. It's got a broad range of stimuli. Oh, there's this. Oh, got to watch out for this. Choo, 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 choo. Has many distractions, and it's only able to focus on that one thing right there. And then it goes, and then it goes, and then it goes. Reading a book is like a scuba dive. Right? It's deep. It's slow moving down there, okay? You have time to explore that. So reading is an example of like the scuba diving thing. You get into that story. You can hear where it's going in your head because you're reading it. You can picture it. It's slow. There's no other distractions around you. So most of our kids are jet skiing when we really need them to scuba dive. Okay, so reading and those slow tasks, it's actually much healthier for our brain. Okay, this one, digital dementia. Okay, I heard that, and given my age, I'm kind of like, I don't really want to look at that word. Okay, but it describes how the overuse of digital technology kind of has our brains kind of looking like somebody who's got some early dementia going on. We just can't quite remember things the way we used to. We can't quite track the way we used to. Okay, that kind of stuff. Kids and teens no longer actually have a need to memorize things. I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, I had to memorize a whole lot of stuff. Even like directions on how to get somewhere, there was no GPS thing. By the way, if any of you have like preteens or kids that are going to grow up to be drivers, here's my advice: do not let them use a GPS. Make them learn about mapping. Get that brain some instruction on how to go from point A to point B by this road, and this connects to this, and so forth. That's the way their brain kind of learns kind of visual spatial stuff. Most kids do now is they, on their phone, GPS it. All right, their brain isn't learning then that strategy about even directions, north, south, east, and west. All right, so right now, though, they don't need to memorize things, okay? They actually have the internet is like an external hard drive. They can put everything there. Then they just re-Google it. It's all there in the external hard drive. All right, we didn't have that, so our brains had to be built to compensate for that. And the memory capacity correlates with language comprehension and academic performance, which, of course, go down the more that your memory goes away. It is. And I'll tell you, even as a grown-up here, where I was, of course, born before 1995, whenever we had this WWW thing, but even now, I find that like I've started to use my notes on my phone to like remember grocery shopping and stuff. I was like, I really shouldn't do that. I should still be stretching my brain to keep remembering all those things. But I remember thinking, well, I'll just make it easier if I just put it right in there, and then I just have to look at it. But I'm forcing myself not to, just to keep that brain memorizing things. All right? But it's tricky. This, because I like cats, and I had to throw in a couple of cat pictures now and then, I'm going to be talking about sleep next. This is one of Kelly's favorite topics, too. All right, most teens sleep with their phones next to or in their bed. Instead of a stuffed animal, they got their cell phone right there. Most use their phone as an alarm clock. They most check their social media before sleep and when waking up, as well as during the night often. Because they get woken up during the night by texts and messages, and oh, do not get me going on that breaking a streak. I have kids, even like 10, 11-year-olds. And again, bless their hearts, they're sweet little kids, but they're like in my office because they're anxious, see this all get out. And then they're like, but Dr. C, don't you see, I have to like complete the streak because we had like a 147-day streak on Snapchat. And if I don't answer her at 2 a.m., then I broke the streak and she's gonna be mad at me. Truth. I was like, oh kid, honey, you need to go to bed. 2 a.m., you're responding to a Snapchat streak. So it's real, guys, and it goes along with that fear of missing out. It's this desperation, too. That's the tone. It's desperate. Like, I just have to do this. And then the other thing is, inevitably, I ask kids about sleeping and how many hours are they getting, what time do they go to bed, what time do they get up, do they have their phone next to them or in their room? And almost all of them are having it in their room. And always I'm like, I said, you know what, I'm really thinking that you should put that phone like down in the kitchen or something so it can charge tonight. But Dr. C, you don't understand. That's my alarm clock. If I don't have that, I'm not gonna get up in the morning. I'm like, yeah, right. And I said, well, you know what, I'm guessing your mom and dad would probably shell out $10 at Target for you to get a real alarm clock. And then that's when I'm like, huh. And I bring the parent in and I'm like, you know, I think if you guys talk about maybe going to Target and getting a $10 alarm clock, but they don't want to do that, okay? It gets that desperate. I feel it off of them. It's like, you know, I've got to have this or else. And it's sad. Do those look like happy kids? No. What are they doing? They're checking it. They're checking that phone. There was a quote from one of the resources that I used from a 13-year-old girl. We didn't have a choice to know any life without iPads or iPhones. I think we like our phones more than we like actual people. I believe that. Again, when I see kids sitting in my waiting room and they're just like, they're like it's the world to them. You know, that it's so strong of a significance in their lives, which means other things are being pushed out, other important things. So this is a more individualistic generation rather than an other people generation. Phones are not teaching kids how to focus and develop high quality relationships that have meaning to them. The word friend has lost its meaning. It's more superficial. Friend used to be understood as someone you had a close emotional relationship with. You knew them, usually over a long period of time of building that friendship, and it would go deeper as a friend. And it was based on time together, experience together, and sharing of personal information with really only 1 or 2 or 3 people. You didn't share it with everybody. Now, friend is used on social media or gaming as someone who sees your content online, you play a video game with them, and in fact, you know nothing about them personally. And it's, again, then there comes loneliness, because all this friendship stuff is the superficial level. And parents all the time, again, it's hard, and I don't blame parents in any way. But I'll say, you know, have you wondered about Johnny's, you know, video gaming and the friends that he says he has on there? Well, yeah, but at least he's being social. So we parents have to kind of redefine what we mean by social. And if their kid is lonely, a lot of them are telling me they feel like it's better than nothing. And I say it's probably not better than nothing. Okay, I think we need to really work to help Johnny to learn how to make different kinds of friends. That's hard for Johnny, but let's keep trying. Okay, let's try various strategies, because we know that this superficiality is going to go like that, and then Johnny's going to feel lonely, and then likely to get more depressed or anxious. So, the other thing I was going to mention on this is social relationships. We don't really talk about how complex they are, but they're hugely, hugely complex. And it starts when they're, you know, really more like kind of kindergarten, and they start to get into a real social world with having little friends. And each year it gets more and more complex. So we have to pay attention to all the signals, all the meanings, all the intent, all the visuals, the misinformation we might get from somebody. We're not really sure how to read them. There's so much that goes on, and it's a layering effect. We have to keep getting better and better and better at it. If we don't teach it at these young ages, because frankly they're on video games all the time or social media, and they think that's a friend, they're missing these stages of how to understand the complexity of relationships. Then we get them all grown up, and after college, how are you going to get a job, buddy? You know, when it's how you interface with people. So I worry that we're missing a lot of those steps and covering it up. This refers to one of Kelly's concerns that she's seeing in clinic that frankly I would never have thought about, honestly, since I don't really work with the moms and the babies that much, but hugely important, is the effect on parent and child attachment. So infant attachment to initially primarily mom, because mom's the source of food, is critical for healthy child development. Kelly, kind of maybe mention what you've seen some in clinic about babies and moms.
They'll have their phone in the other hand and be flipping through, looking at Facebook or whatever else on their cell phone. So what the baby sees is the side of the face, rather than their eyes to the baby's eyes. And a baby's best vision is from your nose to their nose about 18 inches. So if the baby's not getting that connection with the face, particularly with the eyes, what happens is their attachment to that parent suffers. And we are seeing a lot of kids who come into the office, they don't make eye contact. They haven't learned the skills of making eye contact and saying hello. So they're looking away and they're always showing sort of a side of the face. And it's been really sad to see. So I actually talk with parents whenever if daddy's bottling or mom's feeding the baby, you pick your baby up, you put your phone down. That's it.
And it's just, even though maybe most of you are beyond like the baby stage, I put this in there because it's very important and because it indicates another aspect of how powerful the effects of technology are, not just for our kids that are beyond babyhood, but kind of as our society. Okay, if we're starting a society where babies aren't getting that eye contact and that bonding to the level that it's needed for healthy development, we're not doing good, guys. Okay, then we're really messing with things. So. By the way, the attachment also applies to dads as well, okay? I do have a fair number of parents, and again, I get it, parents are exhausted. It's a hard thing to be a mom or a dad, but I do get, where a kid will say in my office, yeah, I want to play with mom or dad, but they're on their phone, okay? So either get off the phone or find something interactive to do with your child in the phone as a compromise. Cut the time maybe, or say, hey, let's do this together. So at least you have some bonding there, instead of mom or dad's on their phone, kids left doing something else, all right? Don't panic, all right? I'm going back to the feelings line again. Where are you guys at? Are you up on the scale, down on the scale? Probably up. We'll get you down there, guys. Homework? Yeah, sure, you betcha. All right, because we're northern folks. Have an open discussion about, what do you see happening here? How much time do we spend as a family? How does this affect your friendships? Honestly, I'm going to be starting to tell people, I'm going to probably put this slideshow somehow or other available to my patient families. But, take some of this home. Start it as a conversation. And then you all start to model. Okay, so like with parents, then okay, so I'm going to cut back to this many hours a day. And, during this amount of time, I'm with you, kid. I don't care if we're not doing anything, I'm with you, meaning it's open time where we can go do something if we want to, or we can just sit around and kind of be with each other, and dad can do the same, older sister, older brother can do the same thing. But then it's also having available activities to do. I think the hard part is the kids with the friendship part, where we don't have a direct influence on that, and it's hard to really garner how much time they're actually spending, on that social media stuff. Next time we're going to be talking about apps and things you can do to, frankly, shut it down, when it's over the allotted time. So that once that's kind of established, you can say, okay, well, your social media time is between this and this, and then it goes bye-bye. The phone's out of your room by 9 p.m., but we're going to go read together, we're going to go play a game. It's having those alternate activities and then putting some restrictions on that social media, as well as keep talking about it. Keep talking about what is a real friend, what does a real friend look like, sharing maybe if you have adult friends, your husband has adult friends, most people have family friends, you talk about how that came to be. So modeling, as well as shutting it down in some areas to the extent that you're able to. And keep it as an open dialogue. I think these things really aren't talked about. The only times they're talked about is in an angry, shouting way, stop that, you're on the phone again, get up. Well, it's not talking. I've gotten guilty. I'm sure I've done that, So, but good question. Just a couple more slides. Here's my homework. Talk, okay? It's capitalized and it's underlined for a reason, guys. Talk to your husband, your wife, your partner, and or your friends and your relatives. Really discuss it. I think what happens is we keep this all in our heads and we're frustrated and we're worried, we're scared, we're overwhelmed, but it stays within us. We've got to talk. It's first as a family. But then also, talk to your friends, talk to your relatives. If you have brothers and sisters and they have kids, hey, this is kind of bothering me. What do you do? What do you do? Have it be kind of the norm to talk about these things. I say, get into the meat of the topic. Use this presentation as just a beginning. And then write down some things you may want to change in your home. Okay, it doesn't start until you kind of write it down, make a contract with yourself. Monitor your own usage. As I mentioned, get a family input. Have a family meeting to get some input. I put into it, some may actually be relieved at having some monitoring done. And that's the truth. And I'm not going to guarantee your kid's going to like it, because they probably won't. But I have had kids that after the fact, they're like, it was really stressing me out. It was really stressing me out to have to respond to all those texts. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for kind of shutting it down. It takes the pressure off of them, especially when they're a little bit younger, kind of like that 11 to 13, where they just don't really know what to do. Or I have had kids where it's like, some like a 6th or 7th-year-old little girl, not interested in boys or anything like that, and suddenly, through social media, some boy asks her out. She's freaked out. And what do you do about that? Well, I got to kind of get that out in the open so we can talk about that. Lots of talking, guys, as well as maybe have new rules. Okay, so as part of this, what do you want to do with the rules? How much is too much? Talk to your kid's school about setting tech policies and restrict some of this. And some other folks and I were talking before this about there are some schools that are starting to do that. And I think hopefully get some started locally too. But schools have to be on board. Okay, right now, do you know what happens in the average junior high or high school? Kids go in there, their phone is with them throughout those classes. I actually feel bad for the teachers. I don't know how in the world they teach. My hat is off to the teachers of the world. I don't know if any of you are teachers, but bless you. Okay, it is hard. It's a hard job to begin with, let alone if you've got kids being distracted by them pulling out their phone. All right, kids, we have to do this, some group project. And that's one of the complexities is whenever parents try and restrict the usage at home, the kid says, oh, but I got to get online to check the portal or to get their assignment or do their assignment. That's the tricky part. There are some districts that, now the kids don't like it at all, but the Chromebooks have been so monitored and so limited, so restricted, that really the only things they can access is like the stuff that they're supposed to. There aren't any extra apps on there, and there aren't anything that could be fun. Okay, so and actually just this last week, I had some kids grumbling about that at another school. Yeah, I can't do anything on my Chromebook. They have this new policy, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's kind of for your best interest, kid. So, but that would be, again, from the school's kind of administrative point of view, is what is that Chromebook being able to be used for? Because you're right, if it's for distracting games and stuff like that, that's really not educational, you can't get away from that. If it's purely educational, then frankly, from what I have found in the research, the educational part is not as addictive. And it's because their brain isn't getting the fun out of it. It's the chore. I have to do my homework. I have to check my school view, Power School, whatever your school uses. So it's not as much of an addiction because of the dopamine isn't there. Nobody likes to do it. The dopamine comes from where it's fun. So it'd just be limiting what's on that Chromebook. But I do sometimes wonder, like, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, probably more like 10, St. Paul Public Schools, it was always in the newspaper about Chromebook for all or something like that. iPads for all. Well, guys, I'm looking at the time. We are almost 8 o'clock on the dot. Thank you. Thank you, guys. You've been a great audience.